Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into episode number 10 of my 2022 college football initial preseason rankings, and this is a ranking that I heavily debated with, but I am going with my number 10 team, the Oklahoma Sooners. Guys, as always, we're going to go through their entire schedule, talk about their toughest game, their current quarterback situation, a few breakout players for Oklahoma, their biggest question in 2022, and then one bold prediction from me at the end of the video on Oklahoma football in 2022. So let's get right into it, guys. The overall schedule, I go through every single game, and they start with UTEP at home, 3:30 game on Fox. So that'll be their opening game. Very easy win. You know, you got a new quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, coming off a major injury, getting him in the transfer portal. I like a very easy week 1 game. Week 2, much of the same. It's going to be Kent State at 7 o'clock. That game will be on ESPN+. God, I hate streaming platforms. I hate streaming platforms. I'm not watching that one, but they will face the MAC team. They'll be about 44-point favorites. We would expect 2 extremely easy wins. That's a primetime game. And then week 3, it is the second half of their home and home with Nebraska. Last year, they struggled, but they were able to defeat Nebraska at home. Now they travel to Lincoln, and what a major bullet they dodged. This game gets the big noon treatment, meaning 11 a.m. Central start time in Lincoln, Nebraska. That's so unfortunate if you're a Nebraska fan. You're trying to rejuvenate your program. You're coming off a very disappointing season where you lost a bunch of close games and you get slapped in your biggest non-conference home game with a big noon start time, 11 a.m. Central. That's great for Oklahoma. That's really going to minimize the crowd noise. 11 a.m. That's a morning game for those poor fans there. And we know Nebraska, I think Nebraska has the best fans in college football. But 11 a.m., that is tough. Manageable game. Nebraska should be better. I'm expecting a 7 or 8 win season from them. But if you're Oklahoma, this is the time you want to face them. On the road, noon game. It could be a sneaky tough game. I give Oklahoma credit for scheduling legit home and homes with teams, but very winnable, very manageable first 3 games. The non-conference, you would hope you would go 3-0 with Brett Venables. If you lose even, to Nebraska, that is a major failure in my opinion when it comes to non-conference. Even though Nebraska, I respect their program, but you got to win that game if you're Oklahoma, even with the new coach, even with the new quarterback. Getting into conference schedule, it's going to be Kansas State at home. Kansas State is a sneaky team, but getting them at home, you got to win that game. At TCU, that's another game. They lost Zach Evans. They've got a new head coach. You got to win that one. Then they get the Red River rivalry versus Texas. I am not extremely high on their chances to beat Texas. This game is always close. And by the way, I don't know why it says TBD. That game will be on at noon. And ABC gets that game. So the ESPN networks actually get the Red River rivalry this year. Normally Fox gets it and they throw it on big noon. But either way, I believe that game is always played at 11 a.m. Central. So that'll be the neutral site game. And I would say it's a complete toss-up between Texas and Oklahoma right now. I mean, I was considering ranking Texas as my number 10 team in preseason, but I'm going with Oklahoma. I'm just saying that'll be a very close game. It always is. Versus Kansas, free win at Iowa State. I do not expect Iowa State to be very good this year. I know Matt Campbell is a good coach. Losing Breece Hall, though, they even had a bad season last year. Remember, Iowa State was the fraud team that I said was a fraud when people were saying, oh, they're a preseason top 10 team. They were a total fraud. In Iowa State, it's a road game. You got to win it. I'm guessing that'll be like a 3:30 FS1 game maybe just Fox straight up. The next week, you got Baylor at home. I'm not high on Baylor. I never am high on Baylor. They do have a very good coach. We have to respect them, but you're getting them at home. You're trying to get revenge. Remember last year, Lincoln Riley and Oklahoma, they got crushed when they went to Baylor for that big noon game in Waco. They need to get revenge. At West Virginia, very winnable. Versus Oklahoma State, I am not high on Oklahoma State either. That game's very winnable. And then at Texas Tech, that's a great close to the schedule. Like, that is a really, really, really manageable schedule. Wow. If you're an Oklahoma fan, you're breaking in a first-year head coach. You got after the Texas game, all of those games you're going to be favored in. Very nice schedule for Oklahoma. This roster, the reason I had so much trepidation about ranking Oklahoma 10th overall, this roster had more turnover than USC's roster because Lincoln Riley leaves Oklahoma. He takes Caleb Williams. He takes Mario Williams as well with him to USC, and I mean, just the transfers that this team is bringing in is crazy. But overall, guys, their toughest game, that's actually a tough question. No, I think the Texas game is there. This is an easy, I'm not going to lie. I did not realize this. You don't realize it until you look at it. Maybe at TCU, at Texas Christian could be maybe, but I guess their toughest game is a neutral site game versus Texas, maybe at Nebraska. A very manageable schedule for a first-year head coach. Going to their current quarterback situation, so they bring in an absolute star quarterback, Dillon Gabriel. Such an unfortunate thing happened with Dillon Gabriel last year. The injury limited to 9 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but you look at his overall career as a sophomore at UCF, 32 passing touchdowns, just 4 interceptions. He's maintained a quarterback rating of 156 or higher in all 3 of his years, and he started as a freshman as well and almost threw 30 touchdown passes. This kid, make no mistake, is an elite quarterback. Great transfer get for Oklahoma. You lose Caleb Williams. It's a debacle with Lincoln Riley. But you come back and you get a very one of the top transfer portal quarterbacks. If you're just looking to stick him into a situation and say, go win 11 games, this is the guy you want. I love Dillon Gabriel. It's just, how does he come back from the injury? We got to make sure. Normally, it's not an issue with guys when they suffer these, long injuries, but hopefully he'll be able to come back and there'll be no issues with that. Looking at a few different breakout players, this Oklahoma team, there's so many fresh faces. Marvin Mims, I wouldn't consider him a breakout. He did have 700 yards last year, and he's also being mocked in first rounds of 2023 drafts. If you guys don't know about Marvin Mims, he's going to be a superstar receiver. Him and Dillon Gabriel, it's going to be 1,200 yards and maybe 10 touchdowns. 22, I'm just looking at this right now. 32 receptions, 700 yards, 22 yards per catch. Wow. Is that what it is? Yards per catch? Guys, my brain is not working right now. Marvin Mims is good. They've also got another young receiver that I'm really high on who was a 4-star recruit. He was limited to about 70 yards last year, but he was a true freshman. And then when it comes to their defense, they are replacing a lot on the defensive line, but a guy I'm looking at, Reggie Grimes, who's going to be I believe, junior. He's a guy that had 2 sacks last year, highly regarded recruit from the state of Tennessee. Remember, this Oklahoma team, completely new look. You're going from an extreme offensive mind to an extreme defensive mind. Literally polar opposites. Lincoln Riley didn't care about defense. Brett Venables doesn't really care about offense. It's going to be so interesting to see how this program transitions. And Reggie Grimes, another guy, Ethan Downs, they have players. This kid as a freshman last year didn't do much, but he is a player. I remember being extremely high on him as a recruit, one of the top players in the state of Oklahoma. Commits to Oklahoma, and there you guys can just see those top 3 leaders in sacks. They're all off to the NFL. They all got drafted, in the NFL draft. So overall, it's going to be interesting to see what Brett Venables does. Keyshawn Lawrence, the cornerback, is someone I was really high on when he was a 4-star recruit from the state of Tennessee. He is a sophomore. He had 4 pass defenses last year. He's 6'1". He's a guy I would expect to step up. Also, Brett Venables, he's done a job in the transfer portal, getting depth, cornerbacks, 2 corners, a linebacker, defensive line, defensive depth is what Brent Venables looked and found in the transfer portal this offseason as he assembles what Oklahoma fans hope is an elite defense. So those are just some breakout players. I think the number one question in 2022, how big of a shift do we see within this program when it comes to offense to defense? Like they were a bad defensive team. Now with Brent Venables, do you think that would be improved? They were an extremely elite top 3 offense every single year with Lincoln Riley. Now you think with a defensive-minded coach, they're not going to be as good. How much does that shift? Is the offense able to maintain a level while the defense gets better? The offense isn't going to be as good as when Lincoln Riley was here. That's just the reality. But can it still maintain a top 15, a top 20 level as the defense catches up to it? That's the question. Or will we see a full shift where the defense becomes really good, the offense not so much? A lot of this is so much projection because Brent Venables has never been a head coach. And it's just a roster with a lot of influx, a lot of new faces via the portal due to the whole Lincoln Riley debacle and how he left. So the biggest question to me, how much does the pendulum shift? Does Oklahoma really, in one offseason, go from an offensive-minded team with very little defense to the exact opposite of it, to where, now with a defensive-minded coach, they are a defensive-first team? It's just such an interesting coaching change. You go from Lincoln Riley, who's pure offense, young offensive innovator, to Brent Venables, older coach, never been a head coach, defensive mind only. Very interesting. It's a very interesting shift. It'll be, kind of unique situation here, what happens to Oklahoma. And then one bold prediction for this Oklahoma team, I am going to go with Marvin Mims, 1,500 receiving yards. That's my bold prediction. I love Marvin Mims. He's going to be a first-round pick in my estimation, especially if he has 1,500 receiving yards. Dylan Gabriel, I'm still expecting 40-plus touchdown passes from him. They still have a good offense. They've had some guys that have transferred, but they also still do have a good offensive line, and I've seen a number of Oklahoma offensive linemen as pretty high draft prospects for the 2023 draft. So that's good news there. You're not losing that offensive line nucleus. But guys, once again, looking at this schedule, this is a very manageable schedule. I think a lot of it is just I'm not as high as other people are on Baylor. I'm not as high as other people are on Oklahoma State. Those are the two teams I think that people are a little bit too high on in my estimation. So when it comes to this schedule, you've got a free 2-0 start. You get the week 3 game at noon. You love seeing that on the road, 11 a.m. Central. The crowd's not going to be into it at all. Then Kansas State at home. I've heard some things about Kansas State possibly being good, but do they have Adrian Martinez? I believe they do. So, you would think at home that's a very winnable game. At TCU, very winnable. Although, you never know with TCU on the road. They could surprise you. They're normally like a 6-6 team. Then you get the neutral site rivalry game versus Texas. That's a pure toss-up to me. Versus Kansas, win. At Iowa State, you got to win it. Versus Baylor, you got to win it. At West Virginia, Oklahoma State at home. At Texas Tech, this is a manageable schedule, ladies and gentlemen. Very manageable. You're not going to see Oklahoma on primetime ABC too many times this year. I'll say that. It's just not a good schedule. It's just simply not a good schedule, which I guess would be good news for Oklahoma. And I think a lot of that comes down to I just do not believe I'm not as high on some of these other teams like Baylor, like Oklahoma State, as many other people are, where I'm sure a lot of people think that Baylor game is going to be tough for Oklahoma. I'm not too concerned about it. I think they beat Baylor by 2 touchdowns at home. But we'll see what happens. There's a lot of projection. We're still 4 or 5 months away from the actual. How many months are we? June, July, August. It's like, 3 months maybe. 3.5 months, but before week 0. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. My number 10 overall team. A lot of debate. I was going back and forth. Maybe with a team like NC State, putting them at number 10. A team like Texas, putting them at number 10. But looking at all the rosters, it's so much projection. Brent Venables, new head coach, getting about 50 players in the portal. I'm just trying to project new quarterback, but you're trying to do as best as you can with the current roster situation, this Oklahoma team, I can see Brett Venables assembling a very elite defense, and looking through this schedule, very easy schedule, in my estimation, for Oklahoma football in 2022. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.